All right, so it's a couple minutes after 7. Let's call the meeting to order. Welcome, West River Modified Union Education District meeting. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you speak tonight, please remember to identify yourself, name and town of residence for the viewing public. And we'll get started. So, does anybody have any additions or corrections to tonight's agenda? Anything we omitted, folks? Okay. The members of the public, if anybody's here to speak to something that's not on the agenda, that's your time to speak about it. If you're actually here for something that's on the agenda, then you'll be allowed to speak at that point. Anybody got anything that's not on the agenda? Okay. Correspondence. We have about 12 letters, all of which are a form letter which encourages the board to take the petitioners seriously and reverse the decision to move the 6th graders to Leland and Gray. These are all, I believe, I know they are all posted on our website now, and I have copies here if anybody'd like to see them. We have an email asking us to consider a later start time for Leland and Gray, especially with the 6th graders here. There's a substantial amount of evidence to show that that's beneficial. That goes on. That will be posted on the website, but it's not right now because it was an email and I still have to redact some things. And the last piece of correspondence, we have our clerk, Anita Bean, has received a petition. I don't have the exact wording of that because she has the petition, and it being Veterans Day, I couldn't get to her today. But she's verifying the voter signatures, and once that's done, the petition will be delivered to us. We'll get it to Bill, and we'll get it to our attorney for the next steps. I expect to have those answers and that procedure available at the November 26th meeting, and we'll tell you where we're going with that. Anybody else have any correspondence? Received anything? Okay. New business. Perfect timing. We have the West River Pilot Food Program. Chef Chris, are you ready for this, or do you need a minute?
Let me set these down, and I'm going to come and put some food in front of you guys, and then
okay.
We can talk about anything you would like.
The what? We have the first item on the agenda is the West River Pilot Food Program. We're talking about, and I gotta find the handout here on that. Yes, you do. Oh, there's one with food all over it.
Oh, yes.
I was organized. Yeah, I was organized until we got all the new stuff. Thank you. Okay, so the proposal is to create a district-wide self-operating food program under the direction of Chef Chris Parker. And then this talks about, and you can see it, talks about his experience working in the restaurant industry, farm to table in Bernardston, and then it outlines benefits for the students. But it would be, it would be locally grown as much as possible, food that was prepared, in-house, and we would we would try to feed all the children in the district with this. And I guess we have some demonstration food.
We do. So I did make it
for
up
everybody.
For our guests as well. Everybody is welcome to try. And we're going to go on kind of a trip from what a breakfast at Newbrook has looked like, right through some of the lunches that we've done. So I have 4 different items for you, and we'll just take it from there.
I actually was at a meeting a week or 2 ago where I got a preview of this, and I can tell you, you're all in for a treat. This man can cook.
You're welcome. I'll put these in there. I don't know if anybody's showing up or not.
Yeah.
Sarah, can I come here? Yeah.
No, there's enough for everybody. And
Yeah, there is
I
extras
don't know
over
how-
there on
I
the
don't know how
table. Please try something.
if you'd like to be Drew, you can't vote, but you could sit in his spot.
I am not coming upstairs. You want me to hand you a plate?
Is this your typical breakfast here?
So, as soon as I get this out, I would be happy to explain it to you.
right.
What you have in the cup is a strawberry banana smoothie. These are cinnamon rolls, but we play with them a little bit so that they are not your typical all butter, all sugar cinnamon rolls. So, a lot of what's in there is applesauce, a little bit of butter, some cinnamon, and the roll is actually a whole grain pizza roll that we are able to use for multiple things, which leads to the pizza roll that is there. That's just something that we do occasionally for the kids down there because it's different than just a big chunk of pizza. It's a little bit more fun, and it's, who doesn't like to play with food? So, I mean, these are meatloaf. These are smaller than the ones that we serve there. I do, however, make the meatloafs that we serve there in a muffin tin, and then we top them with the mashed potatoes, so they're more like a cupcake. Again, something a little bit more fun, more age appropriate for the kids. It gives them, they're curious about it at that point. They want to play with it, they want to see what's going on, and so it's just been a little bit better to, there's been less waste since we've started doing things that are a little bit more fun for them. And these are just maple cookies because, well,
They're maple cookies.
because we gotta have cookies. So. All right, so there's that. Again, guys, there is plenty over there. Please try something.
Don't
there's
have to
pizza
tell me
rolls,
twice.
there's meatloaf, there's cinnamon buns over there. I do have some smoothies here, and I have some cups that you guys can use as well.
Please sample. I think that way we can all sample.
10-minute recess for soup.
Yeah, do we need to take a 5-minute recess to eat? Because we don't do that on camera.
Executive conference?
Yeah, right.
Chris, we got some specific questions down
Let me
there.
grab my stuff here.
Hey, will you two scoot down? Oh, come on.
I can't, I just started eating.
Come on, I'm not gonna serve you guys cold soup.
Oh, there you go.
Specific
I'm
questions.
only moving down one, you gotta move down two.
Em, did you get one?
There is in the shake, yes. I'm sorry, I did need to ask if there was any allergies.
Take a 5-minute break.
There is.
Thank you.
All right, so let's fire away. I'm so excited to answer all of your questions.
Where's Miss Garland? Oh, okay. So, Miss Garland and Chris have been working, I would say 3 or 4 months. Would that be fair? Trying to figure out how this could all look for the West River District. We gave Chris quite the challenge of financially trying to make it work and structurally trying to make it work. I think it might be interesting if you kind of share your kind of vision for how this would play out.
Sure. So, my idea here is that we turn Leland and Gray into more of a production kitchen. And production kitchen tends to scare people. Oh, you're just going to make mass quantity and it's going to be the same garbage that you get in the grocery store. What I see is that all of our schools, K through 12, will have the same menu. So if you have a child in Jamaica and one at Leland and Gray, you know what those kids are eating every day. There's no surprises. Looking around down there, I see a vending machine with candy in it. I see highly sugared tea drinks. There's a lot of stuff that I'm not sure that we really need in this district. So some of those changes are able to be made. But ultimately, we would be about a week ahead of schedule. So let's see, the last meeting that you guys were at, we made some calzones. We had, what else did we do that night? Meatballs.
Yep.
So a lot of that
Meatballs.
stuff, in order to control our budget, we can start to make that out of one building. So I'm not making a 2-ounce meatball, and Jess, I'm sorry, wherever you are, you're right there. So at Townsend, they're making 1.5 ounces, and I'm not saying that that's the way that it is, but This way, we're the same across the board. Every student is getting the same portion, and everything is accounted for. So we don't have money going into the bin at Newbrook and Jamaica's running out of food, or however that may go. So all of that food would be delivered a week ahead of time. The people that are in each school would be responsible for the final product. So if it's shepherd's pie, they would be assembling that. But all of the main components would already be, they would have the amounts that they need to feed their staff and the students that are regularly signed up. So my hope there is that we control, obviously, the waste, the amount that's going into compost. We ensure that every child is getting the same portion, and that it's all the same farm to school quality that we've been doing in Newbrook. So anywhere that we can hide things, the meatloaf that you guys have in front of you, the state or the feds say that we have to serve a half a cup of legumes every week to our students, and that's great. We do that. They all go into the trash. So to ensure that the kids are actually eating them, is there any kids in here that are getting them? I puree them. I mix them into our meat. That gives me an extra 5 pounds, so that extends my beef. That gives them the nutrients that the state says that I have to give them, and they have no idea that they are eating them. I can't claim them for our reimbursement, but it ensures that they're not going into the bin, and that's what's important to us. Same thing with our cheese sauce. I don't know if anybody has ever seen yellow milk to make yellow cheese, but I certainly haven't, so I refuse to use yellow cheese at Newbrook. So when I make my cheese sauce, I puree either sweet potatoes or I puree carrots. And we base the cheese sauce around that. So all of that is in your cheese sauce. And the kids have no idea. They think that I just opened up a can of nacho cheese. But that's how we're hiding these things on them. And I shouldn't continuously say hiding, but I want to make sure that they're getting those. But I also want to make sure that they're eating it. Kids, for whatever reason, they don't want to eat white macaroni and cheese. So if I make it yellow like the nasty Kraft stuff, they eat it.
We're incorporating.
Yes, there it is. So those are the types of things that we do there, and that's what I envision for the district as a whole. We would be able to make those cheese sauces or the meatloaf muffins. We would be able to freeze them. We would be able to send them out to each school, and then that school can pull from that, and everybody is on the same page.
Excellent, thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. And that's you're working that's actually cost effective.
So it will be cost effective. I will be right upfront and honest, the first year there are some startup costs to this because there is some equipment that is not owned by Leland and Gray that would need to be purchased. So I'm roughly estimating about $10,000 more than what we currently pay. And then we need to also talk about Provision 2, which is something that Chris and Scotty and Ken, I think, also started doing at Newbrook this year. They're doing a base year. And Chris can probably explain Provision 2 a little bit more in detail.
Yeah. So Provision 2, there is, Kate, correct me, there's 2 or 3 ways that we can feed kids for free. One is direct certs. Your numbers have to be high enough and the state says, sure, just feed them all for free. The other way is that the school can say, all kids deserve to eat for free. Let's take a risk. Let's see if this weighs out. So there's certain schools around us that wouldn't work for, that their paid participation is way too high to offset their free and reduce. We don't have that problem. And that's unfortunate that we don't have that problem, but our families just start making enough to be able to swing it. So we took that chance at Newbrook, and we decided that we feel all kids should eat for free. No child should have to go hungry. No parent should have to worry about whether their kid's eating lunch, and no kid should have to wonder where their next meal is coming from. So we incorporated that down there, and it has been fantastic. There is a chance that we will fall a little bit short on the money that we would have brought. But there's a couple of things to keep in mind with that. One is that we had quite a few unpaid bills at the end of last year, which I'm sure almost every school in this district probably does. Gets to the end of the year, the parents are like, it's only a couple of weeks, whatever, we'll let it fly. So then there's that money that's unaccounted for. You know, staff participation in schools isn't super high because the food isn't that great. But we've changed that down there by making real food, recognizable food, food that people actually want to eat. So the staff participation, that has increased funds that go to offset that. We also started doing a community lunch down there that I do once a month. And that is, I have two reasons for doing that. One is that I feel that it's a great way to offset that cost. The people are coming in, we ask for a suggested donation of $375, and we usually get 5s, 10s, 20s, so that money. So as of right now, we were afraid that the number was going to be, at the end of this year, potentially,
8,000.
yeah, I thought it was 65, 70.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
We've raised almost $1,200, and we're in, what, the second week in November. And I have not done a community lunch in November yet. So that has, or I did one last week, actually, sorry. So we've raised that much money just from staff and community lunches. We've also have a bunch of community members that have reached out to us and said, this is great, I want to give you money. So they've been giving us money. We've worked with the More Free Library. Kate helped me with that. So we got a little bit of money out of that. Newbrook Fire Department, their auxiliary wants to give us some money. You know, we just started having conversations with the Stratton Foundation, and they specifically increased their distribution area to incorporate Newfane because of the program that we have. And I think that that's pretty awesome, that people are willing to make sure that this is successful, to make sure that the kids are eating. So anyway, provision 2, the first year, you do the base year, and your participation is based on, or I'm sorry, your reimbursements are based on your participation. So you want to get as many free and reduced apps back as you can. We have 126 students, we got 108 applications back. Those numbers are essentially unheard of anywhere around here in schools. I was hounding people, please give me your applications. Nobody ever gets that many back. People just say, oh, I make too much, oh, I don't want to be bothered. I don't send my kids, or they don't eat theirs, so I don't need to. So we got all of that back. Our participation has gone considerably up from last year, which is the packet that you guys have in front of you here, the meal counts. So I gave you the middle of September and roughly the middle of October so that you can see the difference in numbers. For breakfast, we were serving 16, and realistically that number was probably closer to 25, but I just happened to pick one day. There might have been a class out, I know. And then in October, we're serving 41, and most of this, well, all of last week, we served almost 50 students on average for breakfast. Our lunch program, you can see that we went from 77 to 87. Please ignore the faculty numbers on here. We've had a little bit of an issue getting them into Power School properly, so they're not recording properly. But then I did September as a whole and October as a whole. Now the running days are different in both of those months, but you can certainly see that there is an increase there. So, yeah, provision 2, I mean, it's just the school has to be willing to take a risk. And Bill, myself, Lori, Scotty, Ken, we put our heads together and said, is this worth the risk? And there was no question in our mind that it was absolutely worth the risk to make sure that these kids were taken care of. It saves the families that are struggling potentially $30 to $40 a week. If you've got 2 kids and you don't have to pack them a lunch, you don't have to pack them breakfast, and you don't have to stand there and argue with them before you get up and go to work. Come on, we gotta go. I do it with 2 of mine. It's just nice. Just get up, enjoy your time with each other, put them on the bus. You know that they're fed when they get there. You know that their bellies are full when they come home. And for me, it goes a step further that some of our kids, whether we want to face it or not, some of them have nothing over the weekends. And the fact that I know that I'm nourishing those kids 5 days out of the week, am I happy that they're not eating over the weekend? No, but I know that I've given them something to sustain themselves until they come back to me on Monday. So it's worth the risk. It would be great if we didn't have to take that risk, but I would take that risk every chance it was presented to me. So
So that risk, to put a dollar amount to it, is somewhere in the $50,000 range. We are, however, looking at a couple of different things. As Chris mentioned, participation increases, so that decreases that gap. There is also, we are talking to the Stratton Foundation about applying for one of their larger grants, which happens in May. And this is right in their wheelhouse of what they, hunger and poverty are two of their main outreaches. So they are very interested in this, doing this as a pilot program as well. And so that gap could close, especially over time, as word gets out and more income comes in. Again, the initial cost is a little bit more upfront as well, but that again will go down over time. So that's those are the costs for the program. So does anybody have any questions about that, or?
No, that number is provision 2, that's,
Right.
I just want to make sure that we're separating that from
Right.
if we choose not to do provision 2.
Provision 2 being feed every child, every adult, everybody.
No.
So let me, can I just
Yeah,
jump in one
absolutely.
second? So let me back up, and maybe everybody doesn't really understand this, but between what we get back from federal reimbursements and your food programs, there is always a gap. So every school has a gap between those two numbers. And that's what I'm talking about as far as the initial gap. We're about $10,000 more than that, what's currently happening right now. Provision 2 is a different gap. Does that make sense to everybody?
Mhm.
Okay.
And how will that affect numbers-wise? This year, we did the pilot at Newbrook, and it looks like it's gonna work out. And are you gonna try to do that at the whole new district or SU level?
That's for you to discuss.
Okay.
That's exactly what.
So
That's
that
the
is
one
certainly for you guys to discuss. I work closely with Rebecca Mitchell from Hunger Free Vermont, who they are the ones that kind of run this program. And between her and Kate Venn, who's here tonight from Food Connects, we put our heads together a lot and try and figure, Kate is the farm to school side of it. Rebecca is the feed the kids side of it. And I'm just the low guy that just slings food out but
Actually, it'd be great if Kate could just talk about maybe some other programs in the area that have gone to this model and what you're seeing there.
Yeah, I mean, all right, I've lost my voice a little bit.
Sorry, Kate.
No, it's fine. I didn't necessarily prepare anything, but just based on the schools that either I've worked with or organizations like Food Connects I've worked with across the state, at all of those schools, participation went up. There's not a school that chose to go to universal meals and participation dropped. Sometimes that takes a year or two. Often there is a little bit of a negative number for that first year, but long term, it is the way to go because it's both financially savvy and you're feeding all of your kids. Yeah, I guess I don't have more really to say than what you guys have said at this point, but I could jump in if there are specific questions.
UHS just went to provision 2. They are probably the biggest school around us that has gone to that. I believe Academy, Oak Grove, and Green Street are all universal because
Yeah.
of direct cert.
And the 3 town schools are all direct certification, universal. That's been going 3 years and they're gonna re-up that this year. And participation in Brattleboro is really high. It's somewhere above 80%. And teachers and parents are both really happy with it, so. And they're a food service management company, but it gives them a lot of flexibility financially to use better ingredients, to do more. So that's kind of one of the big things that I like to talk about, is just that like flexibility financially that comes along with getting more kids participating. So.
Thank you, Chris. So now we have to figure out whether we want to take which gap is worth, which gap we want to address.
Or both.
Or both. Well, isn't if you do one, isn't the, if you do the larger gap, isn't the smaller gap in there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so the total gap, if you include provision 2, is like $118,000
I thought it was 50.
for just provision 2. That's what I was talking about. So in your
Already
regular
contributed.
budgets, you always have a gap, and that equals around $60,000.
And provision, okay, so provision 2 adds 50, and there's other gaps that, and so it's cumulative, but the total gap, if we went all
You
in,
want to feed all students in
is
West River would be
118. And that includes, that's the equipment and the
The
startup
startup?
costs and everything?
Yes. So that is the worst case scenario for the first year.
Okay.
So keep in mind with some of that startup that there is the requirement to lease a van so that we can be distributing to the schools. You know, there's, the Abbey Group says they own everything in this building as far as smallwares as well as Jamaica. So that all has to come about. In order to try and save some of that gap or close some of that, I think that we can look within some of our schools here. Certainly, they are not going to need the fully equipped kitchens that they have. I'm not saying we go in and we take their stoves and everything, but if they've got a couple of smallwares there that they only need 1 whisk instead of 5 of them, whatever, then we can start to kind of move those things around to ensure that we're not spending $10,000, $12,000 on equipment to get us going. Some refrigeration, if there's an extra freezer in one building. With what we're trying to do as far as making sure that we're distributing to each school, it would make sense that we have a Newbrook freezer here, a Jamaica freezer, a Townsend freezer here, and then we're pulling from those when it's delivery day. So if that means that I have to take something from Newbrook or Townsend or whatever to store it here, it's still their equipment, but we don't have to buy something here to store in just to move it to their storage at the other building. So those are some things that I would like to look at moving forward, is that to actually go around and see what is in each of these buildings.
Okay.
And for timing purposes, our contract is up with the food service company. So we will need to go out to bid for next year. So that's when Chris and I started talking about this.
So it's, you know, it's all, the stars are all aligned for us here. That's what you're saying.
And I don't know how much you guys know about what we've done at Newbrook over the past year, but I mean, we're completely opposite from where they were. I started in October of last year. I met Kate, I got into the farm to school committee, I sat on that stuff, and they had a very nice learning garden outside, and that was great. But I saw something bigger. Why don't we turn that into a production garden that the kids can still learn in? So we did a laughter program, a garden club. They helped me plan it. I came up all summer long. We harvested the garden. Again, with the help of Kate and Food Connects, we were awarded a $15,000 grant last year from the state of Vermont for our farm to school program that enabled us to rebuild our garden beds, as well as put in a 25 cubic foot chest freezer that I stored over, it was about 410 pounds of produce produced out of Newbrook's garden, that on the menus that went around, you'll see Newbrook squash, or there's a, you know, the sauce and the pizzas from Newbrook's garden. So we processed what we have. Our kids are eating it. They're eating it more willingly because they had a hand in growing it. So those are other things that I see for the district. Did we save a ton of money on produce this year? Not really, but I can tell those kids right where it came from, and there was a savings. Are we talking $3,000? No. Are we talking maybe $600 to $700? Absolutely. So if we could do that in each of our buildings and continue to grow that, all of that money takes away from this gap that we're presenting to.
So, Lori, just to be crystal clear, what is the current gap?
So
60?
the current gap is right around 60,000.
So to clarify, I wouldn't call it a gap.
Okay.
I would call it community investment in healthy, nutritious food.
I'll get to that spin. I'll get to
All
this
right.
spin. All right, so 60, and then now it would go to 118.
If we included provision 2 for all the schools.
Okay, so another 58,000.
And the 60 is all the schools in the district.
Okay, and
All
so,
the schools in the West River.
Yes. got it.
right, and that's the point that I'm getting to. So it's 58 defrayed over a much larger district.
Yeah. over-
Right. I mean, it's all part of your one tax rate.
So what does that come out to, about $100 a kid to have lunch and breakfast every day of the week for the
I
year?
haven't gone that far down the path of,
That'd be
you know, a
about-
cup of coffee for,
600
you know,
students.
each taxpayer, but I can do that for you.
Yeah, 600 students, it'd be less than $100.
Yeah, so the point I was going to get to is, so 58 on a Townsend budget, that sounds like a lot of money, right?
Exactly, right.
Overall pooled amongst all of our districks.
Right, it's
Which we're now one
$118,000 on a $12 million budget.
Yeah,
So that puts it into perspective for you.
you just said it, there it is.
And Lori, do you imagine that gap will get smaller year by year?
Absolutely, yeah, right. And it may even come out of the gate smaller. I can't promise that.
Right,
you
that's
know.
like the max that it could be.
Right.
Okay.
Worst case scenario.
And the upside of this is every single one of our 600 students eats 2 nutritious meals a day, guaranteed. Okay?
That they want to eat.
Yeah,
They actually eat those meals.
right.
Right, so, you
They're
know,
provided with them, but they also eat them.
And much more ingredients purchased locally.
And I don't have all of the numbers. Kate was getting some of the numbers for us today, but I just didn't have time to pull it all together. But the participation rate for, you know, in particular, Leland and Gray has been dropping over the last couple of years. So, you know, I see this as an opportunity to increase that participation rate at our high school level as well.
And we have 126 at Newbrook. 88 of them are eating consistently for lunch. So we're still not going to feed all 600 students. But the potential is there. And my hope would be that at Newbrook, we break 100 this year. That's my goal. That's the goal that I presented to Bill when we started talking about this, was that I want to see 100 kids eating. I knew that 126 was near impossible this year. You're always going to have resistance from parents. You're always going to have resistance from some of the kids. But the more kids that start eating, the more their friends want to eat. I have some kids that bring a luncheon and they still come and eat because they don't want the bologna sandwich or the cheese sandwich, is it? But they're still coming and participating, and they don't have to worry about whether their parents are going to pay the bill, whether mom and dad are going to be upset when they get that bill in the mail because Junior wasn't supposed to eat at the school, but he did, and now somebody's going to pay for that. He saw something that he wanted, he ate it. We also incorporated the salad bar. That has made a huge difference, not only for the staff participation, but for the kids. Now, if you don't want to eat the green beans, you don't have to. You can go and make a salad. So now they have choices, so our waste again has gone down, and that has also helped with controlling the budget, which all of those things will pull from that gap, and by doing portion control and sending it out to each of those buildings, hopefully that gap can get smaller over the first couple of years. I don't even want to say that over 10 years we could drop this much money. I feel that over the first couple of years that portion controlling will actually help in closing that gap to make it easier for us to swallow giving all of those kids free food.
Can you also speak a little bit about what you do for kids with special nutritional needs?
Sure, so we, the nurses know who has allergies, who's dairy-free, all of that stuff. We take every precaution that we can for that. We try to bend over as much as possible. There are some things that we can't do. I can't buy a huge box of gluten-free pasta for one gluten-free child, but if a parent sends gluten-free pasta in, I will cook that with the other components that we have and make that safe for the child, keep it separate. If they're dairy-free, then we will certainly give them an option of having the sugar-free juice. And then again, with the help of the salad bar, if you're a vegetarian or if you just don't want what we have that day, then you can go and pick and choose, and a lot of the kids are enjoying that. So,
Got a question in the back?
Yeah, so Chris Schurz, Townsend. So we're very lucky at Townsend. We have Jess who cooks for us and does an amazing job. And she started last year. so she doesn't use as much processed foods as we've had in the past. My question is, so Jess buys gluten-free stuff for our students that are gluten-free. We've had a salad bar for several years. But
Which I
the nice,
understand is not being used, correct?
no, we have salad bar, we just don't have the bar. She provides salad as a salad bar option, which is being used. It's just not used as in the bar form, I guess, if that makes sense. One thing that she does provide that I don't know how it would fit in is the flexibility for this Thursday. We have a harvest feast that each of the classes will be participating in, bringing food and providing for families. And how does that work and how does that play out? Because that's a strong part of our Townsend community.
Sure.
And thank you, Jess, for an amazing job.
So there would be no reason for me to step on any toes with that or try to take that from anybody. I mean, we're doing community lunches down there, which works for us. If you guys have something like that, if Jamaica says, hey, we do this every year for Christmas, I would be foolish to say, not anymore. That's what we get when we go to food service companies. Nope, you guys signed a contract with us, this is what we're doing. And we certainly don't want to do that. We still want to keep the flexibility. You guys have that option, and we can certainly, through communication, say, hey, this is the day that we always do this. Okay, so I'm not going to send you the food, or I will send you the food that you need for that, based on the communication that I would have with Jess or whoever's in each of the schools.
So what kind of say would someone like Jeff, in Jess's position, have on the recipes and everything that's being made for, say, her site, her school? I mean, I understand that you're doing like a mass production of a set meal, but what would her part in that be? Given that she's had success at Townsend doing the meals that she's doing, where would her piece in that be?
So we would at some point sit down before next year and say, hey, what's the 10 things that you're making that your kids like the most or whatever. And we would do the same thing at nowhere else because the other ones are all Abbey Group, right? Jamaican. Oh, I'm sorry. So I would certainly want the input on that. There's definitely things that I do at Newbrook that aren't going to work there or vice versa. So yeah, again,
There is that flexibility for...
Yes, I would want Jess's input. Jess and I have worked together over the last year, and I would value her input on that. I have zero, I'm not going to come in and say, this is the way that it is. Thank you, board. This is what I'm doing. That's just not my style. I want to make sure that the kids, if she's got a day that is just record-breaking on we're serving 90 kids this day or however, then that speaks volumes. We should be using that, and if that's working there, then why wouldn't it work in the other schools? So absolutely, I would have that communication.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
It was delicious.
I need a doggy bag.
We can work something.
Joe, can I share one more thing quickly?
Sure.
I'll be very brief. I work with schools across, Food Connects works with schools across the county. And Wyndham Northeast, which is the Bellows Falls schools and Saxon River and Grafton and all that, they went over to an in-house meal program, as you might know, this past school year. So if anybody's interested in finding out more about how that's working for them, which I can say so far it's been really great. Participation has gone up. Communication has generally just like opened up, which is really great. People are talking about food, talking with the new chef Harley and saying what they're seeing that they're liking, what's not working, and it's been really successful. So I would encourage anyone who knows somebody in that school district to reach out with questions, or to me. I know a little bit about what's going on there, so.
And I actually just went and visited them last week in preparation for this meeting, just to make sure that Lori and I hadn't missed anything in our conversations, and their program is very successful. Harley is doing fantastic things over there. He started in the Westminster schools and blew that program up, and it was all farm to school, giving the kids the nourishment and the food that they want. And you start to see a decrease in nurses' visits. You start to see it, and again with Provision 2, when we start to feed more kids, nurse visits slow down, behavioral referrals slow down. Hungry kids can't learn, they're fidgety, they just can't focus. So when we give them the food and the fuel that their bodies need, all of that goes away. So there's a lot of benefits to that, but that's, Harley and I spoke quite a bit about that and just the difference that they've seen in the kids because of their increased participation.
Chris, something that you said really struck me, and it's that Monday through Friday, yes, we can kind of control what they eat. Saturday and Sunday, not so much. Is there any kind of program, any thoughts to packing a weekend?
Go ahead.
No, I just actually heard of a program in the Monadnock schools called N68. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but they pack grocery bags of food to send home with kids for over the weekend. And 68 meaning 68 hours of not eating.
Stratton Foundation has a backpack feeding
Yep.
program also.
Yep.
Aren't they doing something here now? On Fridays, they're making food to take home that's sitting outside. They have a food shelf
Yeah.
here, and then they have Fridays.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And they currently do that at Jamaica. They send home,
Backpacks.
yeah.
I
I
just
think-
heard of another program that was funded by somebody, and I could not tell you who, but they essentially have a grocery store as their food pantry, and the kids and the parents are able to go and visit that to sustain themselves through the weekends. So,
See that Snowy.
yeah, I think that Ken and Bill and Scotty could certainly tell you guys that I get these ideas in my head and then I just run with them. So, you know, anything like that, if there's a potential to add that into our district or into each individual school, and there's a way that I can do it without that rolling onto somebody else financially, I'm gonna do it every time. So, no problem.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
So now you, of course, want direction from us as to whether we should do this or not, right? We need to discuss this, or not yet?
Well, why don't we show you what it looks like in the context of the budget, and you guys can have that conversation.
I guess I would.
Fair enough.
I would ask for some direction on whether you wanted to, I mean, there is the regular contribution from the community that will be in the budget. So I would need direction on the first budget that we present.
Yeah.
Would you like me to include the community eligibility piece and potentially this program?
Community
That's
eligibility
what I
being
would
provision
think.
2.
Yeah,
I'm
60 or
sorry,
118?
Yes,
Thank you.
I get them confused.
Well, that's my question, that's a question that I have for you, Lori,
Yeah.
is even though now that we're gonna be one district, if say 2 of the 4 schools qualify for,
Well, it's not about qualifying, right? It's about just doing it.
so we're just, no matter what, we just do it.
It either, you know, that would be up to the board. Does Newbrook come into the district doing it and then nobody else has that up, same equity? Or is it an equity issue and everybody does it? So that'll be up for the board to discuss.
Isn't there a way where if you have a certain population density of kids who are already getting free lunch, you can, what did you call it, certify or something?
Yeah.
And then that would be a way to get everybody fed, but it would be,
We don't
There'd be-
qualify. West River would not qualify
Okay.
for the community eligibility. You have to have a certain number,
Gotcha.
percentage. of
and it
direct
can't be
service.
done by building, it has to be done by district.
Even still, none of our buildings
Exactly.
qualify.
Okay. Oh, thanks. All right. So in the initial budget, do we want to see the provision 2, or just convert over to this and then, I mean, do we feed every kid or just the ones that want to?
Feed every kid.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion? Feed every kid. I mean, I love it. Hungry kids can't learn. That's right.
Do you need a
saying that
motion?
for a long time.
Need a motion or just directing?
We're just
And I think just direction will do it.
You've been so directed.
Thank you.
Goodbye, Lori.
Chris, you've been.
Thank you, Lori.
She's still eating.
Did you go?
You can just take a plate and,
I am gonna take a plate.
all right, so next item, if we're done with that one.
We
Yes.
had another question for you.
Oh, I'm sorry, what?
Sean Mahar, Townsend. It's a great idea, obviously, to feed all the kids. You can still do that without having him work out of the central base, potentially, without all those additional startup costs. I mean, each school could just adopt that same philosophy, right?
I don't know how practical that is. They've been working
If you
on
can
this for
find
like
people to
4
replace
months,
the Abbey
right?
group in 2 of the buildings.
You've been working on this for 4 months. I don't know if you've been through all the kitchens or not. I mean, is that a practical solution to do it building by building, or is what you've proposed with a central location?
I don't feel it is. I mean, as Ken just said, you would have to find somebody to replace the Abbey group in each of those buildings, or try and get them on board with that. But that doesn't change the fact that the students in this district are not happy with the Abbey group and the food that's being served to them.
I'm not arguing that.
So if we keep them, then that's not going to help those numbers at all, because the participation isn't going to be there to offset that. The reimbursement amounts that we would be getting from the federal government would not be close enough to close that gap. So that's not to say that we couldn't find somebody for each school, but that depends. I don't think that really does much for the gap either, because once you're putting somebody that's going to be more hours in each building, that's going to be more money in each building, so I really don't think that it does anything for that gap.
Yeah, I think the gap is the same. I think the potential to narrow the gap is better when you're doing something in bulk, so to speak, you know? I mean, that's the potential to buy the products cheaper.
You're doing it in bulk, but you also have to get it from here to there, from here to there, from here to there. So it's in bulk, but it's catering. I mean, I'm familiar, it's what I do. So I'm just curious if sort of the established infrastructure could deliver the same result. That's all I'm asking.
I think one other thing to consider too, I don't know if this directly answers your question, but in terms of streamlining, the amount of paperwork that has to be done in terms of the reimbursements to the federal government and then the menu planning so that you're
Thank you.
meeting the
I didn't even
USDA
touch on
standards, that school by school can be really challenging. So one of the benefits of this is streamlining that paperwork process.
Sure.
And that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with food, but I think would save a lot of time and stress on
It
the
does,
SU
and
and on.
I'm glad that you
service.
brought that up, because that was a huge part of our conversation around this, was that every year the state requires more and more paperwork, and Jess has been doing this longer than I have, and she can certainly say that the paperwork is getting a little bit crazy lately. And that takes up more of our time than we're actually able to cook. If you want to cook from scratch and you want everything to be as homemade as possible, you're taking your work home with you. Or you are rushing at the end of the day to make sure that every box is filled in. And so if we switch to this, then with each of those menus that goes out, the production records would go out with it. Those would all be filled out already. The only thing that each person in each building has to do is say, I served 90 kids today. Their paperwork is done. So they're not having to worry about that anymore. So again, streamlining that, all of those little costs are going to add up over the course of the time. So whether we do it in each building and cut away from some money here, we're spending it somewhere else.
Thanks. Okay, so, all right, moving along to the superintendent's cabinet report. Anything you want to highlight, Bill, or should we just turn loose on questions?
So you guys got a copy, 3 or 4 pages, just a couple highlights. We had our 19th year of Journey East visiting with Leland and Gray. It was pretty cool. From the the delegation came from the Inner Mongolian Arts University, and we had, I want to say, 15 families that participated in housing our students, which was fantastic. And next year is the 20th celebration, so it should be quite a show. Our leader, Jesse Riemenschneider, from Leland and Gray, did an outstanding job. It was a challenging handoff from Tom, who had developed this program, and Jesse really did a nice job in taking that transition and building upon what currently existed. Representatives of you for the WCSU board are meeting in a subcommittee. There's a new law called Act 173, which is census-based special education funding. And there is a subcommittee, about 9 members, that have met twice and will be meeting again in February to make recommendations to the WCSU board about how best to use the flexibility within the law to provide the most expertise in instruction for all of our students within the WCSU. So you'll be hearing some updates from me in February and March, and a recommendation from that group will come to the WCSU board in May. As you probably know, we're doing a lot of investment in professional development with trauma-informed schools. We have 2 separate groups beyond the entire WCSU, which met in August and will meet again on November 20th. But we have a separate group of all the principals and central office personnel, or central office cabinet, that meets with the leader to talk about community stress and how to support the adults in our buildings. Because of the stress that they might be feeling from students that are stressed. And then we also have a champions group or a catalyst group, which is made up of volunteers amongst all the buildings, our counselors, teachers that are interested. Craig, one of our principals, is on this group. And they are also looking at ways to support the work of the entire WCSU and becoming much more empathetic and building their capacity in working with students that have traumatic lives or traumatic events in their lives, so that we can support them and create an environment that is safe and secure and welcoming. We're kind of on the forefront on this. There's only a few SUs that are doing this work with Dave Melnick and NFI in Vermont, so it's not easy, but it is really important, and I'm very proud of our leadership in doing that. Just some basic, around the WCSU, the West River. You guys know what's going on here, but in River Valleys, they are also developing a school choice policy that won't be developed and rolled out until March or April. We met with their officers today to work on their budget. They start on the 19th on their budget. You guys start on the 26th. Marlboro has extended all of their pre-K programs this year, so they have 3- and 4-year-olds. They've added an additional 20 students to their school, and they are looking at some capital improvements that might allow them to extend that even more. Wyndham is following multiple pathways to their future. They have a town meeting on November 26th in which the town will decide if they would like to sell or give permission to the school board to sell all the assets of the Wyndham School District to the town and to close their elementary school and provide tuition for all students in elementary school. At the same time, they have received a petition to have a vote to withdraw from the West River Modified Unified Education District. So they will be warning a vote for that sometime in December.
This too?
So the warning is for both West River and Leland and Gray, because Leland and Gray currently exists and West River will exist after July 1st, 2019. So that will mean that if that vote is warned, and that will happen in January, in the town of Wyndham. If that passes, 30 days go by for a reconsideration of that vote. Then this board will have to warn individual votes in each district that currently exists. And if all 4 of those districts vote in the affirmative, then Wyndham would be allowed to be out. If one district votes not, then Wyndham would not. And there's some serious financial implications because we have some long-term debt that are tied up in Leland and Gray. So that will be occurring at the same time that multiple budgets are being built and town meeting is happening, and then the West River annual meeting and the West River budget vote on March 27th. Wednesday, the WCSU board will be presented with the budget, which includes the superintendent's office budget, the special education budget, and the agency fund budget. And there are 3 meetings scheduled for those. They will all occur here at 7 o'clock. First one is this Wednesday. And WCSU is providing professional development on Monday and Tuesday surrounding math in elementary school. And Leland and Gray is working with the University of Pennsylvania in capacity building of instruction. And then on Tuesday, it is everybody that is employed by the WCSU having our second meeting on trauma-informed practices. So we've got a lot going on. It was a really, really busy time.
Anybody have any questions for Bill on anything you might have missed? Thanks, Bill.
You bet.
I don't know how you do it all. Okay.
I don't see my kids.
So, all right. Next up is the school choice process. Later we'll be talking about the policy and actually maybe adopting it.
If the policy is adopted tonight, and this goes into effect starting tomorrow, I just want to point out Ken and Mike and Christina and Lindsay are our policy subcommittee, and they worked very hard this fall to come up with a policy for the board, as well as looking at several, I think we looked at about 8 different policies that exist in Vermont right now, to come up with frequently asked questions, an application, guidelines about how this is all going to work. So what I did is I just produced a quick little 6-slide update to kind of show you guys what's going on, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I really want to thank the principals of the elementary schools and the administrative assistants of the elementary schools. We did a training for the last 2 weeks to kind of go through as many scenarios as we possibly could think about, because this is the first time we've done school choice. So we're trying to do it in the most transparent and clean and crisp manner while providing the most opportunities for our students. All right, Craig, you ready? All right. So in preparation, we did meet with all the principals, the admin assistants. Again, the subcommittee was outstanding in helping us make sure that we were going through all the different policies while creating the one that works best for us. We developed a visual timeline of how it's all going to work out. All of this stuff, if the policy is approved tonight, will be uploaded this week to westrivered.org, so it'll be available. And then on January 8th, we just made sure that if people apply for more slots than are available, we will have a live lottery, and it'll be filmed by BCTV, and it'll be right here, and I will explain the whole process that went on before that, and then we'll do the live lottery. So it's all recorded, and if anybody has any questions, they can point back to that. All right, Craig. So a couple policy highlights. As we were working with the subcommittee, we wanted to make sure that this was crystal clear. That if you have a sibling and if a sibling is chosen for school choice, then it is up to the family to choose if they want that child to follow. They'll have that right, but they don't have to. So I live in Jamaica, and I want to go to Townsend, and I have a 2nd grader and a kindergartner, and my kindergartner, we want our kindergartner to stay, that's fine. But if the 2nd grader is chosen, for the lottery, they get that right to follow that signal. Very important bullet number 2, when you decide to participate in school choice, that means you are giving up your right to your current home school. So if you live in, Cliff lives in Townsend, if Cliff has a child that participates in school choice and goes to Newbrook, then that means that Newbrook is that new home school. And if you don't like Newbrook, or if Newbrook doesn't work out for you, then you've got to go back into the school choice lottery or application process the next year. So everybody has a right to the town that they live in to go to that school. If you participate in school choice, you get a new home school. This was a lot of questions when we talked with the admin assistants and the principals, but essentially, you participate in school choice, you have a new home school. Big one for all of our teachers is, where are they going to be working? Well, we don't really know until school choice happens and we see where everybody's distributed. And so we see what resources are necessary in each of our locations. It's going to take place between December 1st and December 21st. We'll do the lottery, if necessary, on January 8th. We've built into the policy the ability to assign teachers in the spring. There's really no reason to wait once we know where everybody's landed. So hopefully we will be able to allow all teachers to know where they're going to be, what grades they're going to be teaching, in probably around February. Transportation is not explicitly provided. We will run bus routes. If you can catch on a bus route that makes sense for you, and there's room on the bus, you're good to go. But we will not be running 7 different bus routes there and all those things. Again, this is year 1. We'll probably learn a lot as we do year 1. But as year 1 rolls out, we will run our existing routes. You can ride on a bus if there is space. And then I am responsible to determine the available slots based on the guidance from the subcommittee and using the Vermont guidelines of optimal class size of K3 at 18 and 4 and 5 at age 20 students. The class size can go up to, the optimal class size in K3 can go up to 20 on an average and to 24 in 4th and 5th, but the subcommittee felt very strongly about shooting lower. It allows us, if we have 18 students in a 1st grade class at Newbrook and a family moves in, then we can absorb them without thinking about additional staffing at that time. But of course, as class sizes grow, once we do this in December, we still got 9 months before school starts, just like we do now. When we have more students come into our schools, we have to make resource decisions. All right, Craig, keep rolling, buddy. All right, so promotion will start tomorrow if the policy is adopted tonight. We have an ad, and my friend Anita has already created the ad. Thank you, Anita. And that will be running 4 consecutive weeks, and it'll talk all about school choice. Anita has arranged for the Commons to give us papers at each of the schools that we can then send home. So not only will you get a free paper, but you'll get to see the ad. Pretty nifty. Our admin assistants and our principals have been fantastic about making sure that we weekly are sending out updates about school choice, where you can find information about school choice on the websites, Facebook, newsletters. On November 26th, which is our next meeting for West River, at 6 o'clock, I will be here answering any questions that anybody has. We will film it, and so that if you weren't able to come, but somebody else asks a question, that will also be on film. We wanted to do that before you had to commit during the 1st and the 21st. Very good question that came from my good friend Heidi in the back was, does it make a difference if you turn it in on December 1st or December 21st? No, it does not. All you have to do is get it in by the deadline. All the timing is considered the same. Anita is going to make some posters that will be able to hang around the town, and all the principals and admin assistants are getting prepared to host school visits. Because if you're going to be making a decision about where you want to have your children attend school, we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to visit those schools. So the applications are the 1st through the 21st. They're accepted via email, snail mail, or in person at my office. And again, the deadline is midnight on the 21st. That is definitely only by email. Snail mail, it must be postmarked by the 21st, and in person at the WCSU office by 4 o'clock. And again, that will all be publicized. Last one, big guy. And then placement. So the lottery will happen if we have more people apply for the available slots. And that will be live on January 8th here. And then afterwards, we'll mail letters about where students are placed. We will create a wait list in case people move or people, well, really, in case they move. And then teachers will be assigned. In the policy, it's April, May. In our guidelines, it's April, May. There's absolutely no reason we want to wait any longer than necessary to inform our teachers about where they're going to be, because they want to know, they want to plan, they want to have the uncertainty taken away. It's one of the big reasons the subcommittee wanted to make sure that we did this lottery in December and didn't wait, because they wanted as soon as possible for the certainty of our professionals to know when this would happen. I think that's the last one. Is there one more? Yep. That's it? Okay. There's going to be tons of questions, so hopefully not right now, but in general. So we've tried to prep our admin assistants because they're by far the best contact with all of our families, and they will answer everything they possibly can, and then if they can't answer something, they'll send them to me, and I will do my best to answer those questions. This is our first time doing it, so we're trying to be very deliberate, very upfront, to provide as many opportunities as we can for our students. Anita, do you want to say a few words?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I met briefly with Bill last week, and we talked a little bit about the school visit thing. And my concern was really kind of ordinary. I was like, does every parent know what every school in their choice group looks like? So there are 4 towns and 3 schools, and maybe you need to see the school. So I will try to do some promotion that really encourages getting in touch with the school administrators if you want to do a school visit, and I will be doing school hours. And Bill emphasized that you're not allowed to talk to anybody about this administrative assistant. You can't start bugging teachers and kids going, how do you like your school? So it'll be strictly up to you and the administrative assistants to set up a time when you can visit the other school that you're considering. And that's the thing I really think is important to talk about, to encourage, to think about. You definitely want to see those schools, so we'll all work on that.
Thank you, Nina. Cliff.
She just made me think of this. Do you want to consider having like an open house at every school? Just come see your school kind of day?
So I don't know. It's not a bad idea.
You know, if you're going to get a lot of one-off inquiries about coming to see the school, wouldn't you rather funnel that all to a day or 2 or whatever?
I will reach out to the principals.
Wouldn't you want that for the students too? Because they're not going to be able to go during their school day.
Okay.
Unless it becomes like a field trip. Treat it like a journey east. So journeying West River or west.
Journey to New Brook.
Okay. Good, good, good. Thank you.
Bring a friend to school day.
So a big thing for me is to communicate as much as humanly possible this is happening. They can talk to my office, they can talk to any principal, any admin, administrative assistant. They can go on the website. We want people to know that this is available, and especially because we have many families that might currently not be participating in our schools, that might live in our areas, and they might want to participate in our schools. We want to give them that opportunity and that welcoming vibe. So if anybody has any ideas, thank you, Cliff, that was great. Just let me know, and we'll try to spread the word as much as possible and learn as much as we can this year.
Anything else on school choice? If the policy's adopted.
If the policy's adopted.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
What happens if a class size gets really small? Like just say, for instance, you already have some classes that are 6 kids in them, and the class above them 7 or 6. And what happens if most of those kids leave? I mean, is it?
It's a really good question. So it'll be my responsibility to create the placement of educational professionals in class sizes, and that could mean mixed classes. You could have a 1st and 2nd grade class. I guess in extreme cases, you could have a 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade class. It would all depend on kind of what it looks like in the end, and I would present that to the board. Then the board would say, okay, or no. But yeah, my responsibility after school choice is to kind of lay out what it would look like.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
On the opposite side of that. So
Yes.
all of a sudden we've said that K through 3 will be 18 max.
Yes.
You have 30 kids that want to go to a particular school. Then
So I would run the process as we have it. I would create a wait list, and then I would inform the board of this is our reality. Do you guys want me to do something different?
So what triggers the lottery? I guess that was
Once you hit the max. So for example,
18.
If there's 3 openings in the 3rd grade at Newbrook, and you have 5 applications for 3rd grade at Newbrook,
if we have
You have
more
to allot it as a
applications than there
5
are
for the
slots, we will do a lottery for that slot.
Good.
Is there an option to have more than one of each class at a school?
We have not set up the lottery for that. We have set it up for all individual classes. So even at Townsend and Jamaica, where they currently have combined classrooms, the subcommittee was very adamant that they wanted to have the most choice possible, and so it is based on individual class sizes. So if at Jamaica there's a 1-2 class, but there's 10 kids in 1st grade and there's 5 kids in 2nd grade, there are 8 slots available in 1st grade and there are 13 slots available in 2nd grade. And then after choice plays out, we'll see what the classes look like. Thank you. Ma'am?
Go ahead.
So, a lot of times I think you choose a school based on the faculty and the teachers. And so currently, everybody's really used to their beloved teachers. And so now you have people making a choice, not knowing what teachers are going to be where. What do you propose on educating the public and the parents? How can they decide if they don't know what teachers are going to be teaching at what schools?
Great question. So we're very explicit in our frequently asked questions and in our trainings with the admin assistants and the principals that we can't guarantee a teacher in a certain grade at a certain school. I will say that because it'll be my responsibility to play that all out, that disruption for disruption's sake is not something that I would go for. But I would want to make sure that I engage the principals in their opinions about how it all played out. After choice happens, that's really the first decision is where are principals placed? Do we need full-time principals at each location, depending on how it all plays out? And how many teachers do we need at each location? So you're right. I can't guarantee that if you really heard great things about a 2nd grade teacher at a certain school, that 2nd grade teacher will be there at that certain school. But I can also let you know that you wouldn't want to create movement for movement's sake.
And to piggyback off that, Bill, we've also had teachers that have gone from one grade to another in a building. So if you have somebody coming up on that grade and you're expecting that teacher, beginning of the year, things may change around. That teacher may not be in that classroom anyway.
Correct.
Right. Go ahead.
Would
Once in a while.
seniority for the teachers have any, would that have any weight at all? So if a teacher's been in a building for 20 years versus a teacher who just got hired last year, will that have any weight on the decision?
Contractually, no.
No.
The placement of teachers would all be based on, again, it would come down to my recommendation.
And what is your recommendation be based on?
Talking with the principals.
So it's going to be the principal's perception of.
That will be a heavily influenced part of the decision-making process, yes.
Would you consider taking, I don't know, getting some feedback from parents on what teachers they would like to see remain in the school and factor that into part of your decision process?
That's currently not part of the decision-making process. I could see that could be, could have a lot of competing demands of being able to appropriately use that input in a way that would satisfy all the separate requests. But it could be something that we learn along the way. But for this time, no, that is not something we are contemplating.
You could look in your crystal ball. Do you see a lot of changes? Do you think there's going to be big changes?
So the only crystal ball I have is that we had 51 people complete a survey, and we had 36 people indicate the desire to participate in school choice by selecting a different location. Of those 36, 16 families were homeschool families. So only 20 of the 51 currently exist in our system that were interested in participating. So based on that churn of the families, I think we figured we had about 126 families. So we had about 40%.
And we knew where they wanted to go too, right?
Yes. I don't have it in front of me, but essentially Jamaica had about 5 out and 2 in. Newbrook had 7 out, 7 in, or 8 out, 8 in.
+1 or something.
Yeah. And then Townsend was like 22 in and 1 out. So we'll know on the well, I'll know on the 21st, and then we'll all know on the 8th. But yeah, I don't know exactly.
Got a question for you. Were any of those 6th grade students?
No.
Just out of curiosity.
That's a good question.
Sorry.
That's
Took care
okay.
of that for you.
Well, you smile with it this time. I appreciate that.
All right. Choice, any more? Alicia?
So we're looking at this intra-district school choice program for elementary code F31. That's what we're all looking at right now.
You will be.
We will be in a little while. That will be, actually, that policy is warned for adoption tonight.
Yes, so would
So-
this be an appropriate time to bring up a question on the policy, or should I wait till later?
That's actually on the agenda down under old business next after one more. So yeah, in a minute.
Hold your horses.
No, I was just trying to get a lot done.
No, this was actually just questions on the whole procedure that Bill laid out for how it's going to work. Should the policy be adopted, here's how it's actually going to work.
Well, I guess that my question was kind of based on what he was saying. It was very much presented that the parent kind of was the one who got to apply and decide if their child was applying, but in the policy, it's just guided by the needs of the students. So I was curious if that was who decides the student needs, because it was being presented very much like it was a parental decision to apply.
It is definitely a parental position.
Yes. Yeah.
Although we all know children know best.
Maybe in your house.
You ought to try coming over sometime.
All right, anything else? All right, so the next item is the correspondence. We've been getting a whole bunch of correspondence. Here you go. And so I reached out to the VSBA just to get some guidance on how to handle that, because it was pointed out to me that we didn't actually have a correspondence policy, as it were, about how that's actually handled. And there's a recommended policy that we don't have in place yet about public participation, but it actually went down further than that in terms of the rules of how public participation, including written, is handled at meetings. That's actually left up to the chair to decide. So, absent of any written rules, I wrote some down, and I just gave you what I had put together working with Bill a little bit. And essentially, it says that there's going to be time at every meeting to recognize that we received correspondence, whether it's email or snail mail. Anything written is termed correspondence. And that, we'll put this on the agenda, because I create the agenda with Bill. It'll be reviewed by the chair to determine any necessary action, which includes answering questions and responding to the correspondence. I can rule out of order, or the chair can rule out of order, any presentation which breaches privacy, rights of students, parents, employees, anything like that. So if we do get a letter that's inappropriate, it'll be ruled out of order and not even treated as correspondence in terms of posting for protection of, employees, students, parents, whatever. Each item will be posted to the West River Modified Unified Education District Board website after the meeting at which it's received. And sometimes before, it just depends on how it's received and how it goes, but we'll commit to posting it after. And then the last is that the letters are not read at the meeting, however, copies are available to the public at the meeting and on the website after the meeting. It just kind of is. I mean, it doesn't have to be there doesn't have to be a motion or anything. This is sort of what I came up with. It seems pretty straightforward and simple and as fair as I could make it. If I've missed anything glaringly, please let me know. And I think it's probably a living document in terms of if we realize, oh, this isn't addressed at all, we can change it. But
I think you should point out that anything that's put on, any correspondence that's put on, because a lot of people like to have it read into the record. So
we would be, with 13 letters tonight, we would have finished reading 35, 40 minutes in.
I'm not forcing that issue. What I'm saying is, you're gonna have to make sure that any correspondence that comes to the board is part of the record, whether it be an appendix onto the minutes.
It's posted as a separate thing now, correspondence and a date.
But it will be part of the.
It is.
Okay, that's, you have.
Meg and I have figured this out, and it's that way. Oh, yeah.
Public aware of that.
Exactly.
It's not just we're throwing it up on the website and it's there.
No. It's part of, if you go and you look, there's agendas, minutes, draft minutes, approved minutes.
Yeah, and now there's a new
correspondence
category,
is now in there as
Right.
right in there with all the agendas and everything else, and it's labeled by date.
Yep.
I think that was your suggestion. Well, it was a good one.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the correspondence thing. The other thing to note on correspondence is that, and I received this in the VSBA cautioning me that the board should not conduct business by email or writing, and that we were cautioned that the board acts at a convened meeting, and that's where these questions should be answered, and that individual board members should not be answering correspondence back and forth privately, because that dialogue should happen at a warned meeting. And if there are questions contained in letters, that we should undertake to answer them. And we could even answer them in writing if the board directed someone to answer questions in writing.
The only emails I ever respond to is you can find that on the website.
Right. No. I'm just telling you, we were cautioned to be careful of that, because we're not supposed to conduct board business by email or in writing. It's only at a warned meeting where we have a quorum.
Joe,
Yes.
a quick question. How does someone sending you a letter receive an acknowledgement that their letter was received?
I guess we could, anybody who gets a letter can just say, thank you, got it, we'll take it to the next board meeting.
Just checking.
Right now, I don't know if that's necessarily universally done.
I don't know either.
I don't know.
I don't know, because if I send a letter to somebody, I want to at least hear, okay, we got it.
Well, if you send a snail mail letter, I doubt you get any sort of a response. from us. I mean, I don't think anybody undertakes to write you back. If I get an email, a lot of times I'll say, thanks, I got it, or something. But sometimes that takes days too, because I don't check this board email every single day. But, you know, we could certainly, for email correspondence, if you get something, at least acknowledge it so they know it's done. For snail mail, you're just gonna have to trust the post office, because I don't think I can get somebody at central office to like write a letter and stamp it and send it back.
No, but if it gets to the board meeting, you can acknowledge you got 2 letters in the mail.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
And
we have
they'll-
copies of all the mailed
and they'll-
letters
right,
today.
and they'll be put, right. So that's how it'll be confirmed if, right.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
He's my cookie.
Next, this is your part, Alicia. Next is the policy F31 intra-district school choice. That was at our last meeting. We warned that for possible adoption tonight. So, Ken, I don't know, does the policy committee have anything to add to what they've already given us?
Well, it's been warned. The warning time is up. Any questions? Alicia?
I asked my question. I don't know if there's any way to make that more clear in the document, but that's my
Where's your
question.
specific?
So to accommodate occasions when a student might benefit from the placement of school outside of 5K students' town of residence, as the policy of WWMUED, to offer students the option to enroll in school of their choice within the district. Processes for intra-district school choice of school will be guided by the needs of students, space available, and existing resources. So I was just curious on the way that was worded, who got to choose the needs of the students, or was that clearly left? Was it clear? Was it crystal clear to everybody?
Well, students are minors. Their needs are pretty much
met by their
Right, but
guardians.
it's made by families, not schools.
That's
That
Right.
was the clarification that she wanted to just make sure that it's really obvious to anybody who reads this, that it would be a family's choice as
Yeah,
opposed
it's
to a school
choice.
saying, that kid should go somewhere else.
It
No,
can
no,
be
no.
something
Family who
like-
enrolls a
if you
student in a school, so it's their choice.
Well, can it work backwards? You know, in theory, was it just making sure that it wasn't something where you could say, oh, you know, the school believes that this student would do better at such and such a school, and we're putting an application out that student.
Not with all the equity
Just-
we're spreading around.
Just to clarify.
No, the
That
application would have to be made by the
By
parent.
the
The
parent.
school could not make an application to get rid of a child.
And that's actually
Just
on
to
the application too.
clarify that on the policy, that was, that a needed student, that wasn't determined or pressured by the school, it was always given to the parent.
It's always given to the parent.
Yeah, it's the
I know, I'm just saying,
I'm not gonna
we're
take
in
any
the
rights away
wrong
from any
hands.
parents. If you want to, you can go ahead and try it.
In the wrong hands, I just want to make sure our policy was clear on that, that's all.
So I would say that the board really talked about that first sentence to clarify that. So the West River Modified Unified Education District places students in the district schools based on a student's town of residence. And so the application is requested by the parent to change that.
Okay.
That's a great question.
Okay, so anything else about, any other questions pertaining to this policy? Thought that was a hand.
No.
Okay, so then we just need a motion to adopt it if we're of a mind.
I move that we adopt the F31 inter-district school choice program for elementary schools.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt policy F31, the intra-district school choice program for elementary. Any discussion on that? All right, seeing nothing. All in favor of adopting this policy, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, it's unanimous. Date adopted, 11, 12, 18. There you go. All right, school choice policy is in place. Tomorrow the ads start running and we'll see. Cool. All right, so the next item is the facilities committee or the building committee update. We met, we discussed some things. The update really is we're gonna meet again probably before the budget. We're trying to work out another date. this week or early next week. We've had an offer from Leland and Gray to let Ed McGrath go through the engineering reports for all the buildings, as well as tour the buildings and look at them and see. Apparently he's found some things where he thinks maybe the estimates are over or under, and it's just another set of very experienced eyes. So that's in process now. And it's, you know, we're at our next meeting with Lori, probably before the budget draft. Lori wants to come to that meeting, and she's going to be looking for guidance from the building committee about how much of the deferred maintenance that's out there should be included in the budget, and what we're going to do with the capital plan. And I think the current leaning is to, you know, fix what we need to fix to get through the next year, and then as we mature as a district, this very well may be a bond issue to fix these buildings, because there's been a fair amount of deferred maintenance in all the buildings. I cover it, Al?
Perfect.
All
That's
right.
great.
Any questions? Okay.
No, I think it's a good idea though to get in there, because I know some of the projects are being done in some of the schools.
Yep.
That were already on there.
Joe, I just have a quick comment question.
Sure.
Phoebe Connolly, Newfane. So I think your logic is wise. How do we know that the building maintenance isn't gonna just keep being deferred? 'Cause that's been happening a lot for a long time.
Well, we, as a board, we're starting to look at the fact that, you know, it's been deferred long enough that it's getting to the point of we can't do this anymore. It's not sustainable. I mean, the engineering reports are in the millions of dollars of maintenance across the buildings that need to be done, and we know we have to address, you know, that. And that it's to the point now where it's probably going to be talking about a bond to just take care of our physical structures. Other than telling you that it's really we know that that part of taking care of the students in our district is to give them, you know, decent buildings and safe buildings, and we're committed to that. But you know, it could. The board's commitment to that is about all you've got to say that we won't keep pushing maintenance down the road. I mean, there's just.
is it a new commitment?
This is a new board in a new district. And we know that, you know, we're hoping, the hope is that as we work together and we you know, consolidate and we find ways to do things more efficiently, that there will be money to do some of that, to take care of those capital needs that there hasn't been. You know, we've watched the smaller elementary districts, you know, and it's happened here at Leland and Gray. In order to preserve programs, we've deferred our maintenance on the buildings. Now we're looking at ways to make the programs more efficient, so we can continue the programs, and we hopefully will have some money left to put into the capital plans.
Out of curiosity, with the millions of dollars, which would be more feasible, fixing the buildings or building one giant super school?
That's the discussion over the next year, maybe.
Just throwing that out
I mean,
there.
we haven't started having that conversation, but once we, you know, I mean, we've got a year, we could definitely have that conversation again. Okay, any more on buildings? All right, we'll have more, I'm sure, at the next meeting. Negotiations update. The master agreement negotiations with the West River Education District, we're going to go into executive session later tonight. We have a tentative agreement in place with the union. If we ratify it, we can come right out and talk about it, right?
Yes.
Okay. So negotiations is looking good.
Okay.
Budget development update, is that?
Yeah, I just wanted to prepare you all. You're going to see the first budget on November 26th, and it's not going to look like any budget you've seen before. We are the first supervisory union in the state of Vermont using the compelled software. We are going to build our budget in that system. There are 8 supervisory unions that will be running payroll on January 1st. We are part of the second group that is building budgets and then running payroll on July 1st. So I just wanted you to be prepared that it just won't look like when you saw your school budget. Lori will walk us all through in a very deliberate manner. I just wanted you all to be prepared to just come and be really good listeners, have some questions, ask for kind of clarification, because after the first review of the budget, that's when a lot of the work will happen, you know? So I'll want you to come with structural questions, and then you can ask all the questions about priorities and things of that nature. But the work between the 26th and when we meet again in December is going to be heavy duty. So we're working right up until the 25th to get it to you. So you won't get it beforehand. You'll get it on the 26th.
We won't get a draft ahead of time?
You will not get a draft ahead of time.
Okay, that's what I was just looking to see what day.
Yeah. So I just wanted to prep everybody for that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, policy committee update. With that last choice policy, I didn't want you to not have any work. Did you give one of these to Ken?
To the team, man.
To the policy committee?
Yes.
So we looked at this, and there's, we're missing a few of the required policies, I think. And then there's a whole bunch of recommended. So I didn't know if you guys had it in you to keep going and keep putting policies up so that we've got these all, that we've got the required, and then we can look at which recommended we'd like to adopt so that we have this all in place before we become operational.
With all these meetings coming up, you want to add more meetings?
You can, take it slow. I mean, you've got months, but there's a whole bunch of policies to consider that we don't have. And we haven't looked at any of the recommendeds yet. And we've got a couple of the requireds left to adopt.
Thought we covered all the required.
According to the sheet that Bill gave me, we've missed.
We haven't adopted.
We haven't adopted
the HHB because they're all running through your individual schools right now. Unless I did that
The only
wrong.
one we couldn't do is because they were revamping it, we can't do it till next year.
No, I don't think so. I could have missed it. But I mean, you also pointed out, Ken, the B-22 was impossible to be adopted.
Right.
Because we weren't in existence.
Right. So anyway, that's all. I was just like, well, there's you finished the choice work, and there's still more out there, and I just wanted to,
Okay. Oh, no, don't worry. We'll
keep you guys going.
You rebuild the building, we'll get the policies.
All right, good enough.
We got a question in the audience?
Sure. Yes, Heidi.
I'm sorry, Heidi Russ from Townsend, and I'm sorry because this isn't policy related, but I'm just curious, did a decision get made about early learning?
What decision?
About pre-K at Newbrook as well as Townsend, as a decision, at the last meeting, or at least the last meeting I thought I went to, I thought there was gonna be a follow-up discussion about what the pre-K in the district was gonna look like next year.
As it stands right now, full day pre-K is offered in Townsend and Jamaica,
That's right, and that's staying.
and that's staying that way.
Thank you for that clarification.
But they're school choice, so.
But there's school choice, and pre-K can.
Pre-K is offered to any child in the district.
Yes, but when the last meeting, I thought there was still a discussion about whether Newbrook was going to offer pre-K or not.
I thought you said pre-K was only going to be K through 5. Or the school choice.
Right,
School
but pre-K is
choice.
offered to anybody in the district, and they can come there or they can go anywhere else. And if somebody in pre-K wants to go to Townsend and they live in Newbrook, Townsend will take them. They don't have to go through the choice policy. They just.
What if
they
there's
can-
not space for me there?
We have 68 slots, and we have an average of 32 kids, so I think we're going to be okay. But if we're not, I get to bring that back to the board and figure out a solution.
But it doesn't, but to clarify from your school choice policy, when that child then goes into kindergarten, their home school is still the residents, it's not the school that they chose for pre-K.
Yes, unless their sibling participated in school choice, was accepted into school choice, and chose a different school as their home school, then that child may follow the same.
Okay, thank you.
Clear as mud, right? 1 sec.
How long does the sibling thing last?
There is no time
Okay.
limit. As long as the
Like 8
sibling.
years? Like 8 years?
Well, that's a good question.
Asking for a
The
friend.
way that's a long
He's
stretch.
laughing hysterically.
Remind me of somebody I know.
Can you get a question out?
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to, I'm trying to remember from the last meeting, I feel like now that we're talking about it, that there was something that we were tasking Bill about looking into the people that had filled out the survey and asking them.
Yeah, all of that is
if they're-
impossible.
That is
We
what?
we didn't collect enough information in the first survey to go back and do that survey or ask any follow-up questions or anything.
Because there was gonna be follow-up.
There
on
was
it
gonna be
based on
follow-up,
that.
the follow-up couldn't happen.
Yeah, you're not making that up.
No, no, no.
You're not making that up.
It was,
Because there was this discussion about people from Williamsville choosing a pre-K program.
yeah, we didn't
Okay.
collect enough
All right,
information to
thank
make
you.
that out, make that able to work.
No, it was a reasonable follow-up.
Yeah.
The new fan guy shot William.
Thank you, I'm sorry. I interrupted.
Oh, you're very welcome, anytime. All right, so the last,
Consent
we should probably do
agenda.
the consent agenda ahead of the executive session. The consent agenda is just the minutes of October 15th. We just need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Oh, I got something after that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I can't know what was said because I wasn't there. So I have to abstain.
Right, well, I'm just like, no, it doesn't kill our quorum, that's fine. Motion still carries. You have something else?
Oh, just before we go into executive session, I just want to let the public know that the vote that happened on November 6th passed in every single town. So what that means is that if you're in Newfane, you will vote for board members of this board by Australian ballot, and if you are in any other town, you will vote at the floor on town meeting day.
Question. What happens to at large?
At large are voted at the same time that the budget is voted, which will be by Australian ballot.
Just checking.
And it's on the fourth
Wanna make sure
Tuesday,
it's all
it's on
clear.
the fourth Thursday in March next year, and traditionally that ends up being the annual meeting date, just rolling forward a year. But both of those questions passed. All right, so the last thing is executive session. All right, there will be we will probably do something after executive session.
Okay.
And it shouldn't be too long.
Dance competition.
Somebody want to make a
Well, not
motion to
me,
go into
obviously.
executive session to discuss contractual
Christina.
matter?
Make a motion that we go into next session.
Is there a second? And Trish seconded. All in favor of going into executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
We're in.
Things are going.
Okay, so Ken, you want to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we agree to the tentative agreement.
Yes. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that at all? All right, hearing none. All in favor of the tentative agreement as outlined in executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
All right, the ayes still have it, the motion carries. Thank you. Anything else? One last motion, folks.
Oh, wait, when's our next meeting?
Our next meeting is November 26th,
Right, good.
7
Be
o'clock.
prepared on November 26th to look at your calendar the 7th.
Okay,
Okay.
did you move to adjourn?
I did.
Okay. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.